take a look at now the difference between these two objects. So now this object is here. Remember, it still has surface history on it. So if I go and I untemplate this guy here, and that's I can still select that curve, and you'll notice that if I move it around or edit it or anything like that, it's going to affect that shape. So I'm just going to template him for now. And let's take a look at the other shape here. So there's two ways to delete history on the object. For one thing, you can just go to Edit, Delete by Type, and History. Okay, so now if I select this curve, now it will no longer affect this, right? So if I go and reshape this at all, and I go to Control Vertex here, and I go back to Component Mode by clicking up here, then I can still, I can edit the curve. And so if I wanted to edit the curve, I can do another shape. But I can also, but I'm not affecting this guy at all. So I did that by deleting the history. So let's delete this guy for a second here. And let's do one more type of revolve. So I'll go ahead and I'll create, and it doesn't matter which curve I'm going to use here. But let's just say we're going to create one using the Bezier curve tool. So let's look at the curve tools. And Bezier curve tool, which is not my favorite one, but it's one that might have some familiarity with you if you're used to Adobe Illustrator. So this is like, you're dragging from point to point. And you notice how this time I'm drawing sideways, and I'm going to hit the X button at the end points here so that I have this, this object here. Now I can go back to component mode here and select these items, and if I want to snap that to the grid, I hold down the X and make sure that I do that. And so like Illustrator, it has the handles and you can move those around. There are some caveats to working with these. You ideally, if you are having problems with them, you can always convert them to or rebuild these curves. But for now, we're just going to use this as an example. So now we're going to revolve in a different axis. So you might have had this problem, right? You might have done a surface revolve and come up with something like this, right? And so this isn't bad, right? I mean, I made a hubcap like thing, but in another instance, let's say if I didn't really want to create that hubcap, let's say I wanted to create the revolve like working on a lathe, like a woodworker, like there's a spinning lathe and then they carve out the shape from the spinning piece of wood and carve it out. So that's where I create that curve. So I'll go ahead and I'll say surface revolve, and this time I'll open up the options, and so this time I'll look at the axes here. So I'll look at the axis and say X. So there's the X axis, or rather the Z axis. The blue one is Z, so I'm going to change that to Z and apply, and there we go. And again, so we have that scenario where we have the inside out surface, and we just go to surface and reverse direction.